This right here is a 2003 Bombardier Quest 500, and from what I've been told, this thing has had a very hard life. So we're going to be doing a top-end job on this. Actually, yeah, this is the 6-speed transmission for the Harley. Probably don't need this right now. As I was saying, the owner told me this thing's had a hard life. He bought this thing back in high school. He's had it for a number of years, and he said it's never let him down. A few little problems here and there, but nothing big. He's actually got a brand new Kawasaki Brute Force 750 right now, but he still wants to fix up this old Bombardier Quest. This thing's got a lot of sentimental value to him, and I don't blame him. He's had it that long. A lot of miles, a lot of memories on it. I'd fix her up too. One of the main reasons he brought this to me is because it smokes bad, burns a lot of oil. If you come back here, we just stick our finger in the pipe. It's pretty much all oily, very oily. The owner said it's never let him down, but it has started smoking bad. He's lost a lot of oil. He said on multiple occasions it burned so much oil that he'd have to carry oil along with him. He was telling me one time he was in the woods, didn't have anything with him besides his chainsaw and some bar and chain oil, and he checked the oil on it because it stopped smoking. And when machines stop smoking, that usually smoke, well, that's probably a good indication you're out of oil. He checked the oil, it was out. He ended up throwing bar and chain oil in that thing, and he said it's ran quite a while after that with no issues, so, but it does have some issues, so let's address them. So we got some new parts here. If we open this up, as you can see, a top end torn off of it, which is sitting right here. Got the cylinder head, the cylinder, piston. Got our piston rings that were worn down quite a bit. The main concern is right here, the connecting rod. Well, it feels a little sticky to me. There's no up and down play at all, but I mean, let me rotate this clutch and you can see. Now, normally, that would kind of just flop back and forth, but it's a little sticky. Now, I certainly didn't like that, but the owner didn't seem too concerned. He decided he didn't want to go that far into it, so we're going to go ahead and do piston rings, new valve seals, oil and oil filter, obviously, new gaskets, which, oh man, these things were expensive. Take a look at how much I paid for those gaskets. $180 Canadian, which is about $130-something US, plus shipping and tax, and it was around $150 just for a head gasket and a base gasket. That's insane, but it's the only place I could find one for this Quest. Now, I could find all kinds of top-end gaskets for the Bombardier Trackster, and I thought they were the same engines, but they're completely different. I knew that these were automatic, and they had the CVT transmission, where the Bombardier Trackster, like this one, is a standard foot shift. Some of them have electronic shift too. Either way, the transmissions are completely different, but so are the engines. So if we look at this engine, lost a plug. If we look at this engine, this is not an overhead cam engine. The cam's on the lower end, and it's got push rods that come up to your rocker arms. So that's completely different than this Quest in here. This Quest has an overhead cam. As you can see, the timing chain, you wouldn't have that timing chain on that Trackster out there. And your camshaft is located right here in the cylinder head. So the engines are a lot different, which means the gaskets are way different. Anyways, I'm done with that little rant on that expensive head gasket. It's just outrageous. And of course, Bombardier, or Can-Am, whatever you want to call it, they discontinued a ton of parts for this machine. So they're getting pretty hard to find. I'm really hoping that lower end is going to be fine. We're going to do the top end and go from there. Also, he was having some shifting issues where it would not shift when it was running. And the clutch, what I realized was the clutch spring was worn. So we got a brand new clutch spring as well. First things first, let's go ahead and grab our cylinder head. We'll go ahead and replace these valve seals. I'll put together my valve spring compressor. We'll remove that camshaft since she wants to come out of there. Just like so. She just took a little beating through her life. Lift her up on her end. Now we'll come in here. Our spring compressor set right. Get that in there. Now we're just going to wind this in until it compresses enough to get these keepers out of there. If you can't get it out with a screwdriver, magnet will usually pull that right out of there. Just like that. Put our keepers right here. Now we want to unwind this, and you'll see that spring uncompress. Once that happens, we'll remove our valve spring compressor, take our spring out, and push this valve through, Pop that out or remove the valve. Now these are the intake valves and these are the exhaust valves. Now we'll do the same thing to this exhaust valve. Crank that in, compress that valve. Just enough to get our keepers out. They both came out on that try. Now I like to keep the valves in the same exact spot they came out of. So I'm gonna say this is upside down because of the writing. So I'm gonna call the one I already took out the left exhaust. And we can wind this one out. Definitely want to keep our hand over here in case stuff goes flying. Beautiful. Pull that spring out. And we'll pop our valve out. Right there. Now we can get to the... I don't know why I wrote exhaust. Those are intake. It was still right for right and left, but yeah, I don't know. I even said intake. I don't know why I went to exhaust. Anyways, let's get the exhaust now. Go ahead and wind that in. Pull out our keepers. Now this is the right exhaust. Relieve the tension. Okay, spring. Pop that valve out. Look at all the carbon oil buildup on the end of that valve. And the last one. Sometimes they stick, you gotta get them with a screwdriver. There we go. We got two. Relieve that tension on the spring. Now we can remove our tool. That out of there, pop the valve out, same thing. A lot of carbon oil buildup on the end of that. Get that right there. So now we got to remove these valve seals. Now to get these out, you should have a pair of valve seal removal pliers. Now with these, you can just come in here and pop them right out, just like that. Very easy. You can remove these with screwdrivers or whatever tools. I've seen people remove them with anything, but if you have the right tool, it goes way easier. Just like that, all four. Now the reason we are replacing these because it did smoke. We're gonna end up doing the piston rings as well. They were definitely worn down. That was most likely what was causing the smoking issue. However, valve seals can cause smoking as well. Now, especially with an older machine, that's a 2003, so what is it, 11 years old right now? Yeah, 11 years old right now. So what happens is this rubber in here dries out and they start cracking, and that'll let oil by, which will produce smoke coming out the exhaust, burning the oil. Now these actually have a little flex to them, so they're not too bad. I've seen it where you just push on this rubber a little bit and it'll literally crack and break. So these aren't too bad, but we're gonna replace them anyways. New valve seals are dirt cheap. It's mainly the labor to replace them that adds up. Now before I go ahead and replace these valve seals, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this intake boot. Because this cylinder head is pretty filthy, I'm going to give her a good cleaning. So we'll put that there. Get that off of there. And we'll get to cleaning. Brake cleaner, carb clean, whatever you want to use. Give it a good soak. Then we come in with some kind of scrubbing tool. Just scrub all the grease and oil away. Now you can see it's starting to clean off pretty good. Kind of strange exhaust ports on these, huh? Oval instead of round, like most of them. More scrubbing. Now we're not gonna get this is not a show machine or anything. The rest of the engine's pretty rough itself, and we're not gonna clean that off. Might do a little cleaning, maybe pressure wash it or something when we get it back together, but I'm just trying to mainly get the grease and grime and dirt off of there so we don't get any contamination inside the engine when we put it back together. So I'm going to keep working on this. As you can see, we got her pretty clean, way better than it was. So now what we're going to do, we're going to flop her over. Now we're going to do a quick valve lapping by hand. We need valve grinding compound, suction tool. Now that suction tool is not going to stick very good to your valves if there's a bunch of carbon deposits on it. So first things first, clean it all off with a razor blade. Get it nice and smooth. Usually it doesn't take much, especially on the intake valves like this one. Next, I like to take a little oil. That was a lot of oil. And put it on the valve stem to protect the stem. Now we take our valve grinding compound, and you don't need much. You just need a little bit. We'll go around the valve. Now this is the left intake, so we're going on the right this way, just like so. So we take our suction cup, get it in there. You can hear it's starting to grind. Kind of seat it down a little bit. Now every time you do this, just kind of introduces some new compound in there. And I'll show you what we're doing in a minute. I'll show you why we're doing this in a minute. You can kind of hear when the grit is ran out. So we'll pop that out of there. Wipe it off. Now we're going to wipe this off. Clean this with a little brake cleaner. Same thing here. Certainly don't want to leave any valve compound on there. This is a very abrasive liquid. Not good for engine parts when it's running. So essentially what we're doing is we're mating the two surfaces of this valve and this valve seat. And with this valve grinding compound, it actually grinds this down a little bit. As you can see, these two are nice and kind of, you don't want it shiny, you want it nice and dull. And that kind of takes any imperfections away. Now the intake looked okay on this one. The exhaust have a lot of carbon buildup, so that'll actually take that away. So by doing this, it's going to seat the valves better. It's going to increase compression if there is any imperfections in there, which is going to result in the better power, a better running engine. So that is why we are doing this. I'm going to put that back there, and we'll grab our next intake. I'm going to go ahead and clean off all this carbon buildup. Try to put a little oil on that valve stem. A little valve grinding compound. Drop her into place. Suction tool. Now if you happen to get a little valve grinding compound on the outer surface, it's going to make it not made up very good, and your suction tool will not work great. Clean that all off. We'll continue on. You can definitely hear when it's cutting in. Oil on the valve. I know I'm repeating myself, but it is what it is. Valve grinding compound. This is left, so this will be the right if I flipped it upside down. Now these valves are smaller. We're going to use the smaller end of the suction cap. Pull that out. These ones were a little rougher, so they might have to be done for a longer time. We'll just have to check them out. Go ahead and clean it up. Yeah, I'd say go a little longer on that one. Some more compound on. Alright, clean her up one more time, and I think it should be good. That looks nice. That looks nice. Clean our valve seat. That is much better. Check that out versus that. And last but not least, man, look at that. I got some cleaning to do. Hey, I actually did a little oil on this time. Alright, valve grinding compound. And we'll get to work. Alright, they look great. So I did wipe the valve grinding compound out there, but I don't trust it. I'd rather spray the heck out of this thing with brake clean, get it really clean, and then we can go ahead and start putting the head back together. We'll throw some clean rags down. We are all done with this. We can put our cylinder head down. Now it's time for some new valve seals. 3 and 4. These are our new seals. Before we throw them on, I need to put these shims back in here that I took out. I don't think I showed that in the video, but we'll go ahead and put those on. They just sit in there. Left exhaust. Push that down. Right intake. Left intake. I don't think them are quite down. There we go. Now these valve seals, we can just go ahead and throw them right on. Most of the time, you can put them right in by hand, and they're seated just like so. These feel like they're going all the way down, nice and easy. But I do like to come in here and just a little tap. We don't want to hit the rubber at all. We want to make sure we go around, contact the metal seat. You certainly don't want to hit them too hard, just a little bit. Most of the time you can put them in right by hand. I just like to tap them in just a little bit, make sure they're seated. Now we got new valve seals, their shims in. We can go ahead and install our valves. Oil on the valve stem. I like to install these all at once. Left exhaust. And the right. There. Now that we got them all installed, we can go one at a time. Put it up on its side. We're going to use the same tool that we took it off with. We'll just crank that right in. Get it in enough. And take our keepers. We'll put them keepers in the valve stem. Not quite there. We got to go in a little bit more. Get those lined up. Once we get those lined up in there, we can release our clamp. And just like that, we got one done. We'll move on to the next. So we'll do the right intake. Get everything lined up. And then crank her on in. Once we get her wound in enough, we'll grab our keepers one at a time. It helps to have a magnetic screwdriver when you're doing this. That one compressed. And our last set of keepers. Now these can be a pain sometimes, but some other times they'll go right in, no problem. Once you do a few of them, you get the hang of it. And the final release, pull that off. Now we got all new seals, all our valves are back in place. I'm ready to assemble the rest of it. So I made sure I cleaned out all these passages real well. Now we're gonna dump some oil in here. Take our camshaft. There are certainly some signs that she ran out of oil at some point. Oil. I like the extra lube on there. Now we can insert our cam. Slide it right on in. Just like that. Now there's a little holder right here that slides right into this groove. And what that's going to do is that's going to hold the camshaft into place so it cannot move now. Check out all the oil buildup on that spark plug. We'll definitely be replacing this one. Now, I don't want to lose too much of you guys' attention because this is going to be a little bit of a long rebuild. We still got to do the new piston, gasket, cylinder. So instead, we're going to make this a couple part series. This will be part 1. Now, I'd like to know your guys' opinion. Do you like the couple part series, or would you rather just have one long video from start to finish? I don't know. You let me know. Anyways, this will be part 1. I'll see you on part 2.